The cardboard tore and shirts slid across the hardwood as Daniel dropped his backpack by the door and said, "I can't do this today." Suspicion tightened my voice before I had time to name it. Suspicion made me step forward and grab the box while he shrugged into his jacket. I had the box under my arm and the living room full of half-open cartons when he checked his watch and left without lifting a finger to help. In those first rush of minutes, the problem became visible. We were supposed to be a team on moving day, and he left me carrying the evidence that we were not. "I am Emma." I turned the corner of the couch and shoved a pile of towels into the box, counting the seconds as his footsteps faded down the hall. My hands smelled of tape and lemon from the cleaning spray. My knit cardigan had a smudge from a coffee cup. I could feel the pivot of the day. If this was how he treated heavy boxes, it might be how he treated other, heavier things. Suspicion pushed me to look for proof, not to sink into a speech. "Daniel," I called, voice steady. He paused by the stairwell and without looking back said, "I have to go. Meeting in 30. I dropped the box, more raw with the sudden weight of his words than with the cardboard. "We'd split this," I said. "We'd do it together." He tugged at his denim jacket and said, "Emma, I already told you, I'm swamped." I could see him rub the back of his neck the way he does when he wants to stop a conversation. The rub was familiar. The leaving was not new. Doubt arrived with the memory of smaller incidents stacked over months. That doubt slid into a low anger as I watched the door close. 3 days later, I would replay the morning in my head and pick apart every loose word. In the moment, the hallway filled with a new sound. A neighbor's voice from the stairwell, "You okay in there?" Maya called as she balanced a potted plant. Maya leaned in the doorway with a moving box under one arm and a practical look on her face. She was mid-30s, an architect with paint on her palms and an opinion on everything. "Let me grab that for you," she said. And she carried the box like it was nothing. I let her because I wanted proof of cooperation, not charity. "Thanks, Maya," I said. I closed the apartment door, and she looked at the living room scattered with labels and a coffee ring. "You sure he's at a meeting?" she asked. I said, So her eyebrows dropped. "Emma, you have to call him out when he does this. I saw him rush by last week, late at night, carrying what looked like a bouquet and a paper bag. He hugged someone on the stair. He wasn't alone." Maya's voice was low. She set the box down, kept her eyes on me. Her observation landed like a pebble in glass. It made more ripples than I expected. Doubt shifted under my skin into a new angle. This might not be mere thoughtlessness. After Maya left, I returned to unpacking, but my hands found a box labeled kitchen utensils and, inside, a slim envelope tucked between a dish towel and a stack of napkins. I fished it out without thinking. There was a name on the front in a looping hand I did not recognize. Sophie Lane. The envelope smelled faintly of perfume and coffee. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. Suspicion hardened into the next move. Confirmation. I opened the envelope. Inside was a receipt from a boutique 20 blocks from our apartment and a credit card slip with Daniel's initials. I did not invent alarm. I read numbers and addresses. The receipt showed 2 dinners, a spa appointment, 3 dates spread over the last month. My breathing changed. I pressed my thumb into the paper until it left a print. The room felt smaller because the facts stacked in it. I put the envelope on the counter and did what I always do when the world required sorting. I made a list in my small notebook. Item 1. Ask Daniel where this comes from. Item 2. Call Lee. Item 3. Do not accuse without checking facts. The list was method. The list was a way to stall panic and shape an approach. "Emma." Daniel's voice came from the doorway. He had a scarf looped around his neck now, and his hair was tousled at the temples. He kept his hands in his pockets. I moved the envelope close to the edge of the counter so he would see it as soon as he stepped in. "Daniel," I said, and my voice held the list like a shield, "whose name is Sophie Lane." I did not throw the word like a weapon. I put it down like a question on a table. Daniel stopped. "Sophie." He looked toward the kitchen and then away. He fidgeted with his keys. It's complicated." He avoided my eyes. "Complicated how?" I asked. There was a silence long enough for the clock to tick forward twice. "You left me with all the cartons and now this." My hands tightened on the edge of the counter. "Emma, you know I have work," he started. "We do this together." I said, I could trust you." The words did not sound polished. They carried the slow burn of months. He pinched the bridge of his nose. I didn't plan this. I didn't tell you because it wouldn't matter. It's nothing, business stuff, okay? It's not what you think. His voice dropped into the tone he uses when he wants me not to press. The tone irritated me. I heard the building door open and footsteps on the stair. Tom, the manager, stood in the doorway holding a small package. He wore a rain jacket and a paper badge clipped to his chest. "Delivery for Emma?" he asked. He glanced at the envelope on the counter. "Hey, Daniel, saw you last night with someone. Late, on the bench by the lobby. Didn't get a name, but they had a red umbrella." Tom's voice was casual, his casual added weight. Daniel's jaw moved. He looked like he was deciding whether to lie or to explain. Tom, the bench, and then stopped. "Emma, I can explain," he said. He finally met my eyes, and I saw him pull his shoulders up the way someone does when bracing for a cold wind. The action shifted something in me. The doubt became anger. We had an argument that rose in fits and starts. "Daniel, tell me now," I said. "Tell me what Sophie Lane is." The phrase had a single focus. It was designed to extract truth. "Daniel, I didn't want to worry you. I thought I could handle it. It's an old client, only met up a few times." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Emma, I never meant for this to look like." "You never meant to look like a liar or a coward," I said. "You never meant to pick up the bouquet and not tell me." My voice grew shorter. Each sentence a small hit. "Daniel, you met her on the public stair. I heard it from Maya. Tom saw you on the bench. There are receipts with your name." I pushed the envelope forward with one finger. "Emma, listen." He started, then stopped. He looked at the receipt. "That credit slip is for a group dinner I paid for. The boutique purchase. Sophie runs the boutique. I was meeting her about the pop-up space for the firm. I didn't think it mattered. I was trying to keep work separate." His words were arranged like a patchwork defense. "You could have told me," I said. "You could have said, I have a client meeting at 8. Instead you left and I carried everything while you hid a receipt in my box." The sentences came fast now. "Do you see how that looks? Do you see how it accumulates?" He looked cornered. "Emma, I'm not seeing this the way you are. I'm juggling a lot. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't." He stopped mid-sentence and looked away. The argument tightened. We traded short lines like blows. "We were partners." I said. "We were a team." "Daniel, I said I loved you," he replied. "You don't get to toss that at me now." I shot back. "Daniel, tell me the truth." "I told you the truth," he began. "No, you didn't," I interrupted. "You left receipts in my box." He hit the counter with the heel of his hand and then rubbed his forehead. "Emma, please. Don't make this worse." I named his pattern out loud because naming it had been effective before. We went back and forth, 3 short exchanges in a row where the words kept stepping on each other. "Did you see her lips on him?" Maya had asked me earlier. In my head I answered the question by the facts, not by images. I pressed for specifics and he offered excuses. His voice grew quieter, mine grew sharper. Daniel avoided my gaze. He fingered the leather of his watch until it was more worn-looking. After the first wave of argument, I called Lee. She picked up on the 3rd ring and her voice arrived steady, immediate. "Emma, tell me exactly what you found." Lee. Lee is practical, blunt, and a nurse who does not waste breath on hypotheticals. I read her the name out loud and the receipt numbers, put the receipt aside and breathe. "Lee, you deserve the facts before you decide what to do." "But Emma, set a boundary now. Tell Daniel you need honesty. Tell him that if he can't meet you in partnership, you'll make a space for yourself." Leah's voice was crisp. She used short sentences. Her advice shifted me from frantic to purposeful. The emotion inside me moved. Doubt to a cold, organized resolve. The evening bent back toward confrontation. Tom reappeared at the door with another detail. He said, "Daniel, didn't you tell me you were picking up a package for Sophie last week?" She left a note. He placed a folded slip on the counter. The slip had a time and a place and a name I did not know but felt like it connected dots. "Tom, I just thought you'd want to know." They looked close. He shrugged. Tom's presence changed the ledger of evidence. His observation made the possibility of an affair more than a suspicion. Daniel's face went still. "I can explain everything." He started to say it and then seemed to weigh each word. He admitted to meeting Sophie, but he framed it as work meetings that had spilled into normal hours. She about pop-up spaces and I agreed to help. I paid because it was on the firm card. The bouquet was for the shop opening. I didn't mean to hide it. His mouth worked at the sentence edges. His cadence now was clipped. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" I felt my jaw tighten. He responded, "I was trying to protect you from stress. Work is chaotic. I thought it would be easier not to make a fuss while we moved." The claim fell flat. It was an attempt to house a secret under a small lie. At the height of the argument, I pushed for clarity and he pushed back. "You always doubt me," he said. "You always look for signs." "I look because you leave me with signs," I replied. The room filled with short, rapid lines. "Daniel, do you want to be partnered or not?" I demanded. "Yes," he said. "Then behave like it." I snapped. The exchange had 6 beats of back and forth where words struck like small pebbles hitting glass. When he could no longer offer enough words to cover the evidence, Daniel fell quiet. He stood by the doorway, shoulders up, eyes avoiding mine, the leather watch dark against his wrist. I watched him because I needed to see whether he would choose to stay and fix or to keep leaving. His silence felt like a decision in itself. Late that night I paced and opened boxes in small, controlled bursts. I found a photograph tucked in a stack of napkins. Daniel smiling beside a woman at a shop opening, her arm around his waist. Her face was turned slightly away, but I could see the tilt of her head and a strand of hair caught by the light. The photograph made a new kind of clarity. My emotions shifted again. Anger toward him, then a focused calm that rearranged my options into a plan. I called Maya back and asked about the stairs she had mentioned. She confirmed what she'd seen. Daniel had met someone under the lobby light and hugged them like a friend, but it wasn't the quick brush of passing neighbors. He stayed there for 10 minutes, Maya. It looked like more than small talk. Her voice was plain. Each external witness added to the pile of facts, changing how I would act. I waited until late. When Daniel returned from an evening he could not explain away, I staged the moment where words would no longer suffice. I set a plate on the table and left the envelope open and the receipt face up. He came in and stopped at the kitchen threshold, eyes flicking to the envelope. He looked caught. "Daniel," I said. I kept my voice flat. "Why didn't you tell me about Sophie?" He rubbed the back of his neck the way he always does when he wants an end to a conversation. He avoided my eyes and said, "I told you I was busy. I didn't want to cause you stress during the move." I named what he had done. "You chose convenience over me. You chose to hide things in my boxes instead of being honest." His jaw flexed. The confrontation became physical in small actions. His hand on the counter, mine folding into a fist at my side, the watch on his wrist catching the light. I said, "I need to know if this was a line crossed or a pattern. Tell me which it is." He blinked. "It's not what you think," he said. "She and I have a history tied to a project. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag our moving day into my mess." "I'm sorry." His apology landed without commitment. He tried to reach for me and I stepped back. The step was a tiny, precise motion. "A boundary, no more hiding," I said. "If you want this to be ours, you have to place it on the table." "All of it." I looked at him until his face registered the demand. He opened his mouth to respond and closed it again. We spoke in short, raw sentences for a long stretch. "Are you seeing her?" "I'm not dating her." "Then why lie?" "I wasn't lying. You kept receipts where I would find them when unpacking." The exchange kept ending in small ruptures. When Tom knocked to return a package, both of us turned. He handed a small box to Daniel that had been misdelivered earlier that day. "Tom, hey, you two look after each other." "Yeah." He didn't mean to prod, but his casual line landed as a test. Daniel's face had the color of someone who'd been seen. The climactic moment came when I pushed the keys and a small stack of receipts across the table and told him to choose. "Tell me everything now, or I will leave." He reached for the receipts and then pulled his hand back. The decision in his face was sudden and visible. I was meeting her for work, but yes, one night we kissed. It happened at the bench. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose what we were building while you were stressed. He finished the sentence with exhaustion. I asked one more question. "Did you lie to me any other time?" He put his head down. "No more than I have to admit now." His voice cracked on the last word. Betrayal and sorrow collided. I felt a sharp clarity. This was not only about this one moment or one kiss. It was about a pattern of avoiding hard conversations. I did not throw a long speech at him. Instead I acted. I packed a small bag that night, just a change of clothes and my notebook. I wrote a short note and placed the pendant I always wore on the counter. My hands were steady. I left the note folded under the pendant. The act was deliberate. It was a boundary shaped by concrete objects. Morning came with rain and the window freckled with drops. The apartment looked the same, but it did not feel the same. I stood in the kitchen with the pendant on the counter and the envelope beside it. I breathed and felt how my body reserved energy for what came next. A conversation that would set expectations, or the door closing. Lee called and asked, "Did you sleep?" I said, "A little." I packed a bag. Good. Keep the pendant on the counter. Make them see it. Her words were not a slogan. They were a plan. I left with the pendant on the counter and the envelope open so the receipts showed. I unlocked the door and turned the deadbolt behind me. The sound of the latch closing was a small, precise event. It marked a choice made. I paused, looked back once, and set my hand on the knob again before I left the building. The counter held the pendant where anyone could see it. The apartment would remain a place to return to or not, but the pendant on the counter was a concrete statement. A boundary set, a line drawn. That was the morning I chose to make my needs visible instead of waiting for them to be recognized. The door closed behind me with a firm click. The pendant sat on the counter under the kitchen light, a small piece of metal that marked the end of an unexamined assumption and the start of decisions to come. The hallway light was on and the door was cracked when Lena held a package and said, "He took off early." Suspicion tightened my chest and I stepped forward before I decided what to do. I pushed the door the rest of the way open and found the living room in a small riot. A tipped chair, a scattering of plates, and a stack of boxes with open flaps. The immediate problem was visible and ordinary. Someone had left in a hurry and left their mess behind. I set my grocery bag on the floor and looked at the room the way you look at a bruise. Memory flared. The cardboard tore and shirts slid across the hardwood as Daniel dropped his backpack by the door and said, "I can't do this today." The memory pushed against my suspicion and made me reach for a name I hadn't spoken yet. I felt suspicion, and that suspicion made my hands move toward the nearest box. Emma. Lena again, holding the package with the building's label. Lena's voice was small and direct. "Sam's at the door. There's a notice." Her fingers tightened on the cardboard. I walked past the tipped chair and saw the coat Daniel always draped over the back of the couch. The coat brushed my calf like a connective thread I did not want to pull. I peeled it off and found a jacket cuff damp with sweat. That little fact tightened the suspicion into something sharper, not just absent-mindedness, but evidence of hurry. My steps were short as I crossed to the front door. The manager, Sam, stood with a clipboard and a folded envelope. Sam's face had that neutral look people put on when they bring bad news. "Evening, Emma," he said. "Sorry to bother you this late." He pushed the envelope through the gap in the door. I took it without looking at him. The paper crinkled under my thumb. I opened the envelope on the small table by the door and read the printed lines. Past due rent, late fees applied, complaint filed. The numbers were sharp and exact. My mouth went dry. For a moment I thought of the months when he'd handle the bills. I remembered him rubbing the back of his neck and saying, "I'll sort it." The memory landed heavy. Suspicion slid into a question. Where had that money gone? I set the notice down and called out, "Daniel, are you home?" My voice carried in the small room and hit the empty kitchen. No footsteps answered. I moved toward the bedroom with the notice in my hand, and the apartment felt like a place where someone had left a story in mid-sentence. In the bedroom closet I began to search. I pulled hangers, checked pockets, and opened the inner zip of Daniel's jacket. My hands found a folded envelope hidden in a seam. I unfolded it and a thin stack of receipts and slips slid into my palm. They were recent. Coffee shop receipts, a chain motel receipt, and several withdrawal slips with dates spread across the month. Each slip showed the same small withdrawals on days I had assumed he was at work. I read one receipt aloud to steady myself. Blue Willow Motel, 8:21 p. Room 206. The words made my mouth go dry. I had never seen him sleep in a motel on his own. The idea felt concrete and ugly. I kept pulling and found a note folded small with a name on it. Maya. I held the paper and felt a hollow that was not quite fear and not quite anger. It was the sick, bright knowledge that someone had been kept out of the loop. My hands trembled. I put the receipts back into the envelope and shoved it into my cardigan pocket. I left the closet and walked back to the living room where Lena sat on the arm of the couch with her phone lit. Sam, he put the notice through the door. Lena. He looked at me like he didn't want to be the one to say it. She tapped her thumb against the screen and met my eyes. Do you want me to stay? No, I said. My voice came out thin. I'll handle it. Thank you, Lena. I wanted to keep the apartment from collapsing into rumor and neighborly speculation. I also wanted to know what Daniel would say when he came back. Suspicion had become a quieter thing inside me now. It guided me to facts and to a plan. The plan began with facts. I drove to the building manager's office and asked Sam for the ledger. He pushed a small stack of pages across the counter. You should know, Sam. We tried calling you both. Calls went unanswered for weeks. He closed his hand on my elbow lightly. If you need any paperwork, I can make copies. His suggestion was small, practical. I needed practical things now. Back in the apartment, the ledger sat between the coffee table and the couch like a new problem. I found payment gaps, missed transfers, and a late fee note stamped in red ink. The arithmetic made my suspicion concrete. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through recent texts, looking for the messages Daniel had claimed to have sent me. Some were there. Some were missing. A gap of silence stretched across the week, the same week when my memory recalled his slamming backpack down and saying he couldn't do this. When the knock came, it was sharp and quick. Daniel stood in the doorway with a collapsed duffel over one shoulder and his expression closed like a fist. He wore the worn denim jacket that he always came home in. Emma, he said, and his voice sounded tired. We need to talk. I put the ledger on the table and said, Sam dropped this off. Why did you let the rent fall behind? The question landed flat. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck and avoided my eyes. He had a habit of doing that when things got tight. I had to cover something. Daniel, I thought I could catch up next month. His fingers found his keys and he fidgeted with them. Don't make this bigger than it is. His voice was calm, measured. That baritone I knew could feel distant when he drew in. Daniel, I said, because I wanted to keep him focused. There are motel receipts and atom withdrawals I don't recognize. Whose name is Maya on this note? He froze. Emma. Wait, he sat down on the couch and let out a breath. I know how this looks. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you. He kept avoiding my eyes. I've been sleeping elsewhere. It's not what you think. The words came out small and immediate, but they were not explanation, not what I think. I asked, and I kept my voice steady. Daniel, you said you couldn't do the move that night. You dropped your backpack and said you couldn't do this today. You mean you'd take care of the bills? Where have you been sleeping? He looked at the ledger, the motel receipt poking out from my sleeve. He rubbed his forehead. At a friend's place at first. Then I was packing some things. I didn't want to bring it up because I thought I could fix it. He the sentences quickly, the way one ties shoelaces when afraid of being late. The first emotion shift came like a physical jolt. Suspicion, anger. I rose from the chair so fast the cushion made a sound. Packing. Daniel, the rent notice is for the whole building. Who are you paying? I held up the atom slips. Why are there withdrawals at the motel? He met my eyes then, but only for a second. It's complicated, he said. I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could handle Dad's debt. I thought I could. He stopped, and his jaw worked. He had a scar near his eyebrow that tightened as he spoke. I didn't want you worrying. His words tried to soften it. But they didn't explain motel rooms and a name I didn't know. Who is Maya? I asked again. The second emotion shift arrived. Anger, a sinking bewilderment that tasted like betrayal. He swallowed. Her name is Maya. I've been helping her. She had nowhere else. I was letting her crash at that motel. He the explanation quickly and then looked away. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel responsible. Daniel, you should have told me. The sentence was quiet but firm. We make decisions together. You mean you were packing. You left me a memory of boxes sliding across the floor, not an explanation. My voice hit on the move we had made only weeks before. I forced myself to speak the memory plainly, because that memory was a fact that mattered. He fumbled with the duffel and pulled out a small, wrinkled paper bag. I tried to explain, he said. There were hospital bills. I thought this was the only way. I thought I could pay off the debt by doing extra shifts and... He stopped and his fingers found the keys in his pocket and twisted them until the leather watch on his wrist creaked. Lena appeared at the doorway then as if the apartment had its own timing for witnesses. She held 2 paper cups. Emma, Lena, I brought coffee. I thought you might need one. Her presence shifted the room's air towards something steadier. Sam leaned in the hallway behind her with another ledger copy. If you want to file anything official, I can help with names and dates, he added. I looked between Lena and Sam and then at Daniel. The presence of neighbors turned the private into a public problem. My anger scraped into a new shape. Suspicion, anger, a cold practicality. I needed to decide now what the apartment would be and what it would not be. Daniel, I said, and I set the ledger on his knee. Do you intend to stay here and make this right? Or are you leaving? My words were simple. In arguments we always returned to these 2 choices. He inhaled and then exhaled in a way that sounded like a choice being made. Emma, I didn't want to leave. I thought I could fix it and keep helping without you knowing. But if you ask me, I will choose to stay and change. I can cut hours. I can... He stopped as if bargaining out loud would somehow make money appear. I counted in my head the nights I had listened to his measured baritone and the times he had avoided my eyes. I thought of the motel receipt and the folded note with the name Maya. The third emotion shift moved me from bewilderment into a steadier clarity. I would not accept secrecy as ordinary. My decision had to be practical. Daniel, I said, and I reached for my notebook, the small one I kept for lists. I wrote a short list of what would have to change. Transparent account access, a repayment schedule, and shared oversight of bills. I turned the notebook to him. If you stay, we do this in writing. We set dates. We stop the motel stays. And you tell me everything about what you were doing these last weeks. He read the list with a face that shifted from relief to a fragile hope. Yes, he said. I will do that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I kept you out of it. His apologies had the same rhythm as his practical plans. He set the duffel down and ran a hand over his hair. I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix it. Then he stood up and his movements became sharp. He went to the closet and began to pull clothes into the duffel. He moved with a hurried efficiency that looked like the old habit of packing to leave. My voice came out clipped. Daniel, stop. Are you packing to leave now? He paused with a sweater in his hands. I thought you wanted me to leave if I couldn't commit, he said. I thought you might make me go. The room tightened with 2 conflicting expectations. I set the notebook down and spoke the last, decisive line I had been shaping. Daniel, you have until morning to decide. Either you sign a short agreement with me about the bills and you stop the motel stays, or you leave and take your things tonight. I can't keep living with secrecy. The temptation to lecture left me. Instead, I offered a concrete boundary. He looked at me for a long second. Then he shoved the sweater back into the duffel and walked out without the duffel, keys in his hand. I need to think, he said. His voice broke once. He paused in the doorway and touched the side of his face where the scar sat. I won't decide right now. I'm sorry. Then he left. He took the corridor and his footsteps faded. Lena set her coffee down on the table and sat beside me without asking. Sam closed the door softly in the hallway and left a copy of the ledger on the table. Mira, no, Maya did not appear. The name remained an open question. The apartment felt emptied and full at once. The immediate fight had landed and the apartment now contained a list of tasks and a notice and a ledger. Dawn slid in through the kitchen window. I made 2 decisions in quick succession. Call my sister's friend and clear a small box of what I would keep on the counter. I called a number Lena handed me for Maya, not the same name as on the folded note. This Maya was my sister's friend who worked at a clinic and said she could offer temporary space. Within an hour, a woman named Maya arrived at the door with a small overnight bag and a steady, practical tone. Emma, I can house you for a night or 2 if you need to sort things, she said. Her presence was an offered, concrete help. Lena boiled water and handed me a mug. I can help with the rent call tomorrow, she said. We can go to the office together. Sam texted to confirm copies of the ledger were left at the front desk. Each small logistic move felt like chips on a table being rearranged into something livable. I opened a small wooden box I kept for things that mattered in ordinary ways. A chipped mug token from our first move, a movie ticket stub, and a little gold pendant I never took off. I placed the pendant inside and closed the lid. The action was not a declaration, it was an inventory. I made a list of phone calls, bank passwords to change, and the steps to file a plan with Sam. Practical items, no speeches. The final paragraph pushed against reflection and landed on a physical act. I carried the sealed wooden box to the kitchen counter, set it beside the rent notice and the ledger, and slid an envelope with my signed copy of the simple repayment plan I'd written and dated for tomorrow. I turned the lights on low and set the coffee mug beside the box. My hand rested on the counter for a moment, then I called Lena's number to ask about the bank branch hours. The call connected and I began to speak. The last thing that occurred in the chapter was a door across the hall closing, the sound of someone leaving, and my pen moving across paper as I filled in the first item on the list. Change account passwords. I climbed the roof with a damp blanket looped over my shoulder and found a brass key stuck against the drain, its teeth filled with grit, and a smear of dark red lipstick on the metal railing. Suspicion tightened in my chest before I named it aloud. Suspicion pushed me to crouch and scrape the grit with my thumbnail. I pulled the key free and held it up so the morning could catch the brass. And the smear of lipstick looked like proof that someone had been here and touched what was ours. The problem was clear. That key did not belong to our apartment, and the mark on the railing meant someone had been close enough to leave a trace. I went down 3 flights of stairs with the blanket slung over one shoulder and the key in my palm like a small accusation. I had already been losing small certainties since the boxes arrived. The cardboard tearing the week we moved in, shirts skidding across the hardwood when Daniel dropped a box and said he couldn't do it that day. Those moments had seeded my distrust, but the rooftop key made the seed sprout into an active need to know. I called Lena from the stairwell landing and told her to meet me on the roof right away. Lena arrived out of breath, hair in a loose bun, and she repeated what she said that night with more detail now. I saw him, Emma. He left with a woman 2 nights ago. I saw them by the alley. Her voice stayed flat, but her hands clutched the strap of her bag as if holding on to the memory. I said, "What time?" And she said, "Just before midnight." He looked tired. He wasn't carrying anything obvious. Suspicion shifted into guarded anger at the edges of my words. I kept my voice steady and asked her to look at the railing. Lena crouched and inspected the lipstick smear, then wiped carefully with the corner of her scarf to test its permanence. "That's not your color, Emma. It's darker." "He shouldn't have had someone like that on our roof." His name again, as if saying it would make him appear. "Daniel," she said. And the sound of it in that empty rooftop added weight. I told her to come down with me and to keep quiet about the key until we had more than a smear. Back in the stairwell, at the 3rd floor landing, I stopped and remembered the hallway light left on from Chapter 2, the same corridor where I had pushed the door open and found the living room in a small riot of plates and a tipped chair. That evening had left my voice raw when I asked him why he left early. Remembering it made me check my phone for messages and checked the key in my palm. We knocked on Mir Adler's office door 2 minutes later and found him half asleep over a ledger, but he straightened when Lena the camera. He fumbled the security remote and led us to the monitor with the irritation of a man disturbed out of habit, not sympathy. Watching the recording forced me into facts instead of fear. The first clip showed our door at 11:58. Daniel came home alone, keys in his hand, jacket over one arm, and he walked in without looking at the camera. We watched him sit down at the kitchen table, take off his shoes, then stand up again and leave at 1:12 holding a jacket that looked oddly bulky. My stomach dropped, suspicion tipped into alarm. I told myself to breathe and to pay attention to movement rather than what my head wanted to conjure. "Lena, pause it. Rewind, play slow. He leaves with that jacket at 1:12 and comes back later." She touched the screen with the tip of her finger as if she could change what was recorded. Mr. Adler rewound and played again, at 3 a.m. The footage showed Daniel returning alone. He moved faster this time and his shoulders were flat, like someone trying to hide a weight. Lena tapped her foot once and said, "He looks like he's carrying something in the jacket." I said, "That's not the same simple night out he told me." He had to finish a client call. Daniel's name on my tongue tasted like a direct question. We left the office with a plan. Check his side of the bedroom when he wasn't home and look for anything out of place. Back in the apartment, Maya arrived before we finished moving boxes. She came in with coffee and the blunt comb she kept for emergencies. "Maya, you called and I came. Sit me down and show me." She placed her cup on the counter and looked at me with that steady look that had kept me from making hasty decisions in the past. That look moved me from suspicion to action. We would search methodically together. The bedroom was quiet. Daniel's clothes were folded on his side and his jacket hung where he left it by the chair. I said, "Don't touch anything yet." Lena and Maya both mouthed agreement and hovered like small satellites. I knelt and checked under the bed first because small things get shoved there when someone wants them out of sight. My fingertips hit tape on a shallow box taped under the frame. I pulled it free and felt the weight of documents inside. I carried the box to the kitchen table and set it between us like evidence in an interrogation. Maya leaned in and said, "Open it." Now her voice was quiet but firm. I peeled tape and removed a folded receipt and a small photograph wrapped in tissue. The receipt was for a room at the Harbor Inn with a date for the night he claimed to be at work. Lena's face shifted to something hotter than anger, hurt with a raw, searching quality. I unfolded the photograph carefully. It was a grainy print, Daniel kneeling beside a woman whose wrist had a pale hospital band and who held a small envelope. The woman's face was turned away, but the band on her wrist was clearly visible under the sleeve. There was a child-sized backpack slung over a chair in the background with a yellow sticker I recognized from the kindergarten across town. "Maya, Emma, look at the band. That's a hospital bracelet. Who is she?" My first reaction was betrayal. How could he be with another woman and hide it from me? My second reaction was a sharp, confusing question. Why a hospital band? The room started to tilt under the force of what the objects implied. I demanded, "When did you go to the Harbor Inn?" To the empty chair as if the photograph could answer. "Lena, Emma, there are 2 receipts. One for the Harbor Inn and one dated the next morning at Mercy Clinic. He's been somewhere that isn't a hotel with a girlfriend, a mini." Cliffhanger opened in the space between sentences. Why would he be at a clinic after a hotel? We all paused there and looked at one another. The breath in the kitchen seemed practical and steady instead of poetic. We had a new, factual thread to pull. Daniel came home at 4:30 with dark circles and keys that rattled too loudly when he closed the door. He set his jacket down and looked at the 3 of us leaning over his side of the table. I said, "Daniel, what's this?" and pushed the photo and receipts toward him. He froze, then said, "Emma, and stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck in his old, familiar gesture and avoided my eyes. My voice narrowed. "Don't avoid my eyes, Daniel. Tell me where you were at 1 and 3 Daniel's reply came in short, uneven sentences. "I was out, Emma. I left, then I came back, then I left again. I know how it looks." He kept saying my name as if the repetition would steady him. "You had a call," I said. And he said, "It was complicated. I didn't want to worry you, Lena. You didn't want to worry her, Daniel, or you didn't want her to know." That line broke something in him. He looked at Lena and then at Maya, and a quick flash of shame passed across his face. The confrontation escalated. Questions became accusations, accusations became short answers, and the apartment filled with quick, clipped speech. "Daniel, show us your phone. Show us your messages," I demanded. He handed it over without a word, hands slightly shaking. Lena scrolled and found Spar's messages. Logistical notes, times 2 names I didn't recognize, and 1 address. "Maya, he has a Mercy Clinic appointment on the receipt. That doesn't look like cheating." "Why hide a clinic visit?" Daniel swallowed and finally said, "I was trying to help." I didn't know how to tell you. My mouth opened to a dozen questions, and the first words out were sharp. "Help who?" I asked. He hesitated in the way he always did when he wanted to be measured. I kept seeing someone in the building struggling. I thought I could do it quietly, hear the woman's name in a low voice, and it was a name I had never heard. Maya's expression changed then, small and blank for a beat, because she knew the neighborhood stories. "Lena, Daniel, why bring receipts and hotel rooms into our home? Why the key on the roof?" He looked down at his hands and said, "I was giving her a place to sleep that night." I left with her a second time because I thought it would be safer to move her before dawn. The sentence landed with a new weight. One of my emotion shifts moved from anger into something complicated, suspicion bending toward cautious curiosity. I asked, "Who is she, Daniel?" And he said, "Her name is Rosa. She came to the building asking for help. She had a bandaged wrist. She didn't want to go to the shelter computers, not yet. I bought the room so she could get rest and a place to make a call." Lena cut in. "Why hide it? Why the taped box under the bed?" "Daniel, I didn't want you to think I was sneaking around. I thought I could fix it without making it ours." I was wrong. Maya put her hand on my elbow and said, "Emma, breathe. He didn't plan to hurt you. He tried to hide it because he thought he'd protect you both." Her words moved me into confusion. The twist made the earlier evidence ambiguous rather than conclusive. My voice dropped. "Then why the photo, Daniel? Why a photograph?" He explained that Rosa wanted proof of help to show to a caseworker, and that he took a quick picture so she could remember the room number and the key he left with her. The photograph is her keeping track. The receipts are for the room I paid for her. The key on the roof. I must have dropped it when I moved her through the service entrance. I'm sorry I hid it." I watched his mouth form the apology. His hands trembled a little and he avoided my eyes again. That avoidance pushed my suspicion into a clear, angrier mode for a short beat. "Why did he assume I wouldn't understand?" I asked. "Why didn't you tell me at any point? Why let me find keys and receipts in a taped box under our bed?" "Because I thought it would make you worry. I thought if I could solve it quietly, it would be better for you. I was trying to keep the problems out of our life, Lena, or you thought your problems didn't need to be shared with her." The line was quiet but sharp. "Maya, Daniel, when you make a decision that affects both of you, it is not a private thing. You know that." His shoulders sagged. "I know. I should have told you. I wanted to protect you and her, badly enough that I hid it." A detail in the photograph snapped into clearer view now that we had context. A tiny yellow sticker on the small backpack matched the sticker on a kindergarten I knew Emma had walked past many mornings. Lena pointed at the photograph and said, "The sticker, that's a school sticker who is connected to that child." Maya's eyes narrowed as she put pieces together. The hospital band, the child's backpack, the night at the Harbor Inn, the Mercy Clinic receipt. Maybe she brought a child for an appointment. Maybe Daniel helped them get a safe room. It's not the story we feared. It's a different, messy story. The argument had given way to a slow examination of motives. My emotions shifted again from clear anger into protective caution. I felt angry that he had hidden things and protective that someone in our building might need help. I said, "Daniel, you had to tell me." Hiding it made it look like betrayal. My voice was controlled. Each sentence contained an action. He stood and said, "I know, Emma, I will answer questions. I will tell you everything. I don't want you to leave me with assumptions. I wanted to test him with specifics. Where did you drop Rosa off? What is her full name? Did you talk to a caseworker at Mercy Clinic?" He answered each question with brief, concrete facts. Room number, doctor's name, the clinic intake time. His voice was calm and factual. Lena insisted on calling Mercy Clinic while Daniel sat with his hands folded. She spoke directly to the intake nurse and confirmed a brief, anonymous appointment for a woman with a wrist injury the morning after the Harbor Inn receipt. Adler had been wrong about the footage meaning one thing. The receipts and clinic notes gave the events a different meaning. "Maya, we can be angry at the secrecy and still help make sure this doesn't happen again. If he was trying to fix it alone, that's a poor choice, not a betrayal of the kind we first feared." Her practical voice moved me to an action. I would not decide to leave or to stay until I had all the facts and a boundary set. Daniel stayed and answered every question I asked. He named times, locations, and people he had contacted for Rosa. He showed the messages where he arranged the room anonymously and the cash withdrawal slips. Every precise detail he gave reduced the distance between suspicion and the new reality, but the distance was not erased. Trust had cracks now, and cracks mattered in small daily things. I felt my anger move into a steady reserve that kept me from immediate reconciliation. I could see his intention. I also saw his error in excluding me. Lena and Maya did not leave. They helped me list what I needed to see before I could accept his silence as an act of protection rather than a pattern of hiding. By evening, when the apartment settled into a fragile quiet, I picked up the framed photo from the mantel and turned it face down. I packed one small box with my worn knit cardigan and my notebook, the items I reached for when I decided and planned. I placed the box on the kitchen counter near the keys and the receipts and said, "I'm not leaving tonight. I'm making space to think and to set boundaries." Daniel took a step forward and reached for my hand. I let him take it but kept the box between us like a clear, physical limit. "Emma, I will explain every time. I'll bring you into it." "I am sorry I didn't before," I said. "Daniel, actions speak. We will see whether your actions match your words." My sentence was short and deliberate. Lena stayed late and helped me go through the photograph again because she had found a detail I missed. A torn corner of a flyer in the background that matched a poster in the community center where a support group met. If he was moving someone to safety, he used resources he's afraid to name. We need to know who else is involved, Maya. Then we make a plan. You make boundaries, Emma. He shows you how he'll act going forward. We help where help is needed and call it by its name. The three of us made a short list of steps. Confirm Rosa's contact through Mercy Clinic, ask Daniel to meet with a counselor about secrecy, and agree that any future action affecting both of us gets discussed first. Late that night I stood by the window and looked at the rooftop where the key had been wedged in the drain. I thought about the boxes that had arrived weeks before and how a small tear in cardboard had started a chain I couldn't have predicted. My suspicion had led me up the stairs. What I found had been both proof of secrecy and proof of an attempt to protect someone else. I did not forgive in a single motion. I did not accept everything he said as truth without evidence. But I did put one small box by the door and turn the framed photograph face down on the mantel as a signal that decisions would be made deliberately. When Daniel left the room to make coffee, I slid the brass key onto the kitchen table and set the small box beside it. I told him, "I'll be here when you come back. We'll talk about a plan that includes me. We'll check Mercy Clinic records properly in the morning and call the support line for advice." He nodded, voice low. "I want that. I want to make this right, Emma. I don't expect it to be simple." I watched him drinking his coffee slowly, the steam rising between us, and I felt a final shift toward cautious clarity. I could not pretend the suspicion had never existed. I could not pretend the box under the bed had not felt like betrayal at first sight. But the night closed on a concrete action. I had packed my cardigan and notebook into a single box and left the keys and receipts on the table. That small, deliberate packing was the boundary I chose for the moment. I turned the framed photo face down, slid a single box to the doorway, and left the keys on the table. I lifted the folded envelope off the kitchen table and a second apartment key slid into my palm with a faint smear of lipstick on the teeth. Suspicion hit first. Suspicion made my fingers go cold and my breath stop for a fraction of a second. I left the kitchen light on and walked down the hall with the key clenched in my hand. The envelope was small, the paper creased where it had been folded twice. The key felt worn at the edges. I read the handwriting on the outside, no name, and the smell of Daniel's cologne still hung on the chair he had used last night. The kitchen table held cereal bowls from 2 mornings ago and a stack of unopened mail. The apartment felt like a stage set for the morning after a fight. My name is Emma. I am 29. I keep a small notebook for lists, and I have worn the same gold pendant since my mother gave it to me. I had believed Daniel and I would build a shared life in this apartment, a life that matched the promises he said over takeout and in bed. That belief now had a concrete threat, a second key, a plan hidden inside our home. I knocked on the bedroom door because I needed him to look at the key, at the proof, and say an explanation that fit in the space between his shoulders. "Daniel," I said, my voice tight. He did not answer at first. I pushed the door open and found him at the window, rubbing the back of his neck, the denim jacket he loved thrown over the chair. He turned slowly. "What is that?" I held the key up. The morning light caught the lipstick smear like a stain. Daniel's lips pressed together. "Emma, don't me," I said. "Who else has a key to our apartment?" He looked away. "It's not what you think, isn't it?" I stepped closer and the floorboard under my foot creaked because it looks exactly like what it looks like. My hands were steady even though my chest felt full. Suspicion drove me forward. I demanded an answer and refused to let the sentence stall into polite excuses. Daniel's eyes were round and unreadable. I needed a spare for work shifts, that's all, a spare. I repeated, "Why is there lipstick on it, Daniel?" The word came out thin. He rubbed the eyebrow scar I knew so well and avoided my gaze. I can explain. Explain what? I cut him off. His pauses had become a language between us, the way he fiddled with his phone when trying to look calm. Explain the lipstick. Explain the nights you were gone. Explain the boxes we carried in together. He flinched at the boxes line. His face tightened. The boxes, the cardboard that had split and the shirts that slid across the hardwood were not a past image for me. I remembered that first move in night. It was the place where our minor cracks began. I repeated that memory in my head, not as a metaphor but as a concrete stack of cartons leaning by the couch, and let it push the conversation forward. Daniel, Emma, listen. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to keep things simple. Simple for whom? I asked. For you. For the person whose coat I saw hanging on your chair last week. My throat tightened. I named the evidence. I refused to let my sentences soften into ungrounded feeling. He inhaled and the room seemed to narrow to the two of us. I didn't sleep at another woman's place, Emma. I took someone home once because she missed the last train. She lives in our building. I helped her. That's it. I felt a pull between doubt and the need for proof. The suspicion lodged in my chest would not let me accept half answers. I left the bedroom to find Lena. Lena had knocked on our door before noon, out of breath and holding a folded photograph and a small note in her hand. She pushed past me without waiting for permission and set the photo down on the living room table. Emma, I saw him last night. I saw Daniel with her by the stairs. I wrote what I saw. She kept her voice low but quick. Her hair was pulled back, and her hands were shaking just enough that the edges of the photograph blurred when she set it down. The photograph showed Daniel in the building hallway, his hand on the shoulder of a woman I did not know. She wore a dark coat. The photo was grainy because Lena had taken it on her phone from a distance, but the angle and time stamp matched the late night. Lena read the note aloud. He left the building with her at 11:47 p.m. He came back at 3:10 a.m. carrying a coat that wasn't his. Lena, I walked down to the lobby after I heard the elevator. Mr. Ortiz had the security footage pulled. He could show it if we wanted. She glanced at me. Do you want me to call him? The presence of another person with a camera changed the encounter from two people arguing to a small group assembling evidence. Suspicion shifted to mounting alarm. I asked Lena to call Mr. Ortiz, and she did, fingers quick on the screen. The landlord said he would come by in 10 minutes with a thumb drive. While we waited, Daniel stood with his hands in his pockets saying nothing. When Ortiz arrived, he was short and direct, holding a thumb drive like a simple tool. I wasn't going to get involved. But there have been complaints about late comings and coat drops in the lobby, he said. He set the thumb drive on the table as if placing a document. He clicked on the laptop and fed me the footage. The elevator camera showed Daniel leaving the building at 11:45 p.m. with a flinch in his step. 45 minutes later it showed him returning, carrying a coat over one arm and pressing his jacket collar up as if to hide his face. There are timestamps. Missed hours. Ortiz IV kept copies. The footage was small squares of light and slow elevator motion. The camera's timestamp was flat and factual. I watched Daniel move through the frame more than once. Each replay removed a slice of doubt. My suspicion hardened into what felt like certainty. The visual evidence forced my next move. I could no longer rely on his explanations. I left the living room to search the small study nook where we kept his laptop charger and an old stack of receipts. I opened his laptop case with my fingertips, careful to keep the action deliberate and not invasive in tone alone. I knew what I was doing and why. In our relationship, facts had to meet up with words. In a drawer I found recent messages, short emails with reservation details, and a confirmation header from a booking site. The reservation dates overlapped with nights I had noticed him missing. One confirmation line read, "Apartment viewing confirmed. Move-in deposit received." The name on the account was Daniel. The booking listed an address 2 blocks away. I read the confirmation out loud. Move-in deposit received. Daniel, what is this? I put the paper on the table in full view. His jaw worked. "I didn't want to tell you like this," he said. "Didn't want to tell me." I asked, "So you planned to sleep somewhere else and call it simple?" I kept my voice even. I wanted him to hear every word. "Did you plan to tell me face at all?" "Emma, say it," I demanded. "Tell me why you booked another apartment." He swallowed. For the first time in the morning he looked small in the doorway between the hallway and the living room. I thought I could handle the commute. I thought I could keep work and home separate. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you while I figured it out." His hands fumbled with the hem of his shirt. A new emotion arrived. Hurt layered with anger. The hurt manifested in my voice as short, clipped lines. "So you decided for both of us. You made the plan by yourself. You hid it in our home." I set my notebook on the table and opened it, fingers searching for something practical, numbers, logistics. Because I needed to turn the heat of accusation into usable facts. The conversation tightened into rapid back and forth. "Daniel, why wouldn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I was scared," he said. "Because I thought I could fix it without dragging you into it." "Daniel, you never asked me if it needed fixing." My words were short. "You never gave me a chance." I was trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I asked. "From conversations. From being part of decisions about our life." He stepped forward. "Emma, I didn't know how to tell you that I needed space. I thought that if I arranged another place, I could keep my head and still come back when things were better, leaner. I watched you come back at 3 a.m. last week, Daniel. That wasn't just space. The argument had 3 to 5 quick exchanges, sharp and short. Each line revealed more of Daniel's distance and my demand for openness. Daniel's answers were thin. Lena's witness made his explanations harder to accept. The argument functioned like a test in public. It required him to either own the decision or dissolve under the weight of evidence. When I pushed him about the lipstick smear, he did not deny that nights had been secretive. He admitted he had given a spare key to someone who lived in the building so she could store a coat when trains stopped running. He had intended no betrayal. His sentences came out in short bursts, hands moving in small gestures, rubbing his thumb along the watch he always wore, fidgeting with the leather bracelet on his wrist. The shift from suspicion to a mix of anger and sorrow happened in the space of 30 minutes. I felt my posture change. I paced the kitchen once, twice, and put my palm flat on the table. My actions had to match the new emotional register. We could not argue forever in the realm of words. Evidence now demanded a decision. The security footage and the booking confirmation had moved the problem from debate to action. At that point, Mr. Ortiz offered a detail that altered the tone. "There were other entries," he said, "not just that night. I saved them to the drive. There are 3 occasions of him leaving and returning late with another coat." He placed his thumb on the drive and looked at Daniel. The landlord's plain statement had the effect of a judge's note. Daniel's face lost color. I felt a small twist in my chest when I remembered the rooftop key I had found earlier that month. I had tucked that memory into a pocket of suspicion and pushed it aside. The brass key stuck by the drain with dark red lipstick on the railing had felt like a clue then. Now the rooftop key and the kitchen envelope fit together. Pattern, not accident. I named the earlier event aloud. "Do you remember the brass key on the roof?" I said. Daniel's silence answered me. He looked at the floor. I watched him choose whether to explain or retreat. Left alone with his belongings while Daniel stood a few feet away, I opened his phone. I know this step sounds invasive. I also know that when someone hides a second life inside the same walls, privacy becomes a tool used to avoid responsibility. The messages I found were short and practical. Times, locations, a terse planning tone. One message read, "Tomorrow 11:30, drop the coat at my place. I'll handle the rest." Another, "Deposit sent, move next Saturday." The words were not romantic, they were logistical. This discovery turned betrayal into evidence of a plan. The twist was not that he had been intimate with another person for a one-off emergency. The twist was that he had quietly arranged to split living arrangements and keep me unaware while he tested whether that would ease his discomfort. The betrayal was deliberate in the form of omission and planning. I brought the messages to the kitchen table and laid them beside the envelope and the thumb drive footage. The table became an exhibit, physical proof stacked and factual. I watched Daniel's jaw move in reaction to each paper. He tried to explain that he had been scared of confrontation, and that he thought this would allow him to keep both a relationship and a sense of control. His voice shrank as the evidence hardened. The climax happened at the kitchen table in the afternoon, with Lena close by and Mr. Ortiz still lingering at the doorway. Lena's presence had been constant. She had seen the photo, she had heard Daniel's evasions, and she had supported me through the slow accumulation of facts. Maya, my sister, arrived later that afternoon and sat in the living room with a bag of extra boxes. Her calm steadiness changed the emotional arithmetic in the room. She said nothing at first, only opened the bag and began to wrap glassware in newspaper with practiced hands. The conversation at the table became a sequence of short lines and decisions. I asked Daniel to answer one direct question. Did he want to be part of this household on equal terms? He looked at me and said, "I want to be with you, Emma, but I was trying to give us space to breathe." I was a coward about asking for change. He used the word coward. It landed as a small admission. I said, "You arranged for a new place. You did it without me. That is not asking for change. That is making the change for both of us." My words were precise and procedural. "Do you plan to live here or there?" He hesitated and then said, "I don't know. I thought maybe I could figure it out on my own." That answer decided things for me. The final choice had to be concrete and enforced by action, not a vow, not a promise. I set a small stack of keys on the table. Our two sets, his, mine, and the spare I had found. I pointed at the door and said, "Leave, take your coat, take the deposit confirmation and the other key, leave by 5:00. Move out formally." He blinked, and then his mouth moved. "Emma, Daniel," I used his name the way Lena had used it when she wanted the truth. "You hid plans that affect both our lives. You gave someone else access to our home without telling me. That is not partnership, it's a unilateral decision." I can't accept that. There were 3 to 6 rapid lines back and forth as he tried to bargain, to rewrite his motives into something softer. "Please, Emma, we can try counseling. We can take smaller steps. I didn't sleep there to hurt you, not like you think. I can change." He reached toward the table but stopped himself. I kept my hands on the table. "Daniel, you arranged a separate place so you could test whether you preferred it. That's the decision, not an accident. I need someone who tells me the truth when choices affect us both. I can't live with secret plans." He packed a small bag while the argument unfolded. A watch, the leather bracelet, a denim jacket folded with care. Lena folded her arms and watched me. Ortiz stood near the door with the thumb drive in his pocket, as if it had done its work. Maya zipped her bag and came to my side, not to argue but to hold space. Daniel opened the door slowly. He looked at me once, and his face held both regret and a practical calm. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said. He stepped into the hallway, his shoulders square. He took his coat off the hook, draped it over his arm, and left. The front door closed behind him with a final, normal sound. After he left, the apartment did not collapse into melodrama. Instead, it emptied of him. Lena sat on the couch and handed me the photograph again. "I'm sorry I had to be the one to show you," she said. Her voice was low. "You deserve to know." Maya came into the kitchen and collected an empty box. Her hands moved with a quiet efficiency. "Tape fold, stack, we'll make a list," she said. "I'll come back tonight. We'll take things you want and box the rest." Her practical words answered me. I started to pack. Packing was an action that proved a decision. I wrapped a mug and set it aside with care. I pulled a framed photo from the shelf and turned it face down. My fingers left a small smudge on the glass, and then a dry ring where dust had gathered. The framed photo was of the two of us on a street fair weekend, smiling, boxed into a moment where we had both been present. Turning it face down was not a symbolic flourish. It was a way to stop the photo from catching the morning light so it would not grab my attention every time I passed the counter. The act itself felt final and small. Between each box I made concrete choices. The jewelry I would keep, the sweaters he had preferred that would go to donation, the kitchen tools that had belonged to my mother. I moved with an economy of motion. Each choice registered as a boundary. Emotion showed through my actions. My hands trembled briefly when I put his mug in a bag. I paused and breathed deliberately until the trembling stopped. My voice when I spoke was low, practical, and steady. Lena stayed until the last box was taped. Ortiz left after promising to mail me copies of the elevator footage. Maya stayed long enough to set the schedule for moving the remaining boxes, and then drove back to her place with the small stack of things I wanted to keep. She hugged me with a single firm motion that did not require words. That hug told me she would return. In the calm after the leaving, a surprising moment arrived. A line in a text from Daniel that read, "I thought I could spare you pain by deciding for both of us. I'm sorry." It arrived while I was sealing a box. I read it and then deleted it. The action was a decision. I would not keep a live channel open for excuses that arrived as fragments. If he wanted to negotiate later, he would have to do it in person and with honesty. Dusk came and the apartment softened. I put a single coffee mug on the counter and left the framed photo face down. I walked to the window and pushed it slightly open to feel the evening air. It smelled like wet pavement and the bakery across the street heating bread. I sat at the kitchen table for a long minute and let my hands rest on the wood. The table had absorbed our arguments, our meals, and now the formal end of a version of us. That night I slept on the couch with a blanket I had chosen the week we moved in. The blanket smelled like detergent and lemon. I did not write a long reflection or vow radical reinvention. I made practical notes in my small notebook. Contact a locksmith to change the locks, confirm the utilities, list things to take next weekend, concrete chores because concrete actions are how I kept my life steady. Before bed I walked through the apartment and checked each lock and window. I left no door ajar by accident. The final beat of the day was turning the framed photo face down and setting the single mug in the light of the kitchen lamp. I closed the apartment door after setting the alarm and placed the spare key, the one with lipstick on its teeth, into an envelope and slid it into the small drawer where old receipts sat. I did not throw it away. I kept it as evidence of the choice that had been made in the house and the evidence that had led to the decision. Later, as I packed the last box of things to take to Maya's car the next day, "Lena, you'll be okay, Emma. You did this your way." She spoke in the direct tone she always used. Short, honest, without a promise. You set boundaries. "That's enough for now." Maya kissed my temple and said, "We'll fix the locks tomorrow. We'll set a time to sort the rest." "You're not alone in this." Her words were practical, not pep talk. They set a schedule and a plan. I turned the corner in the kitchen and left the mug on the counter. I closed the cabinet where our spare keys had been stored and slid the drawer shut with the envelope inside. The sound of the drawer closing was ordinary. It was a sound that matched the work I had done, factual, finite, contained. I sat down at the table and wrote 2 lines in my notebook. Locks, change. Boxes, final move next Saturday. Then I put the notebook away and went to bed. The chapter ended not with a speech, but with a small, concrete action. I turned the framed photo face down, set a single coffee mug on the counter, and breathed. The apartment felt quieter because someone had left. The quiet was not a poetic emptiness. It was the practical absence of a person's things and the precise sound of an unshared space. I slept with the lamp on low, the window cracked, and the knowledge that I had asked him to leave and meant it. The decision was made at the kitchen table and enforced by action. That is where the chapter closed, on the simple rhythm of a drawer sliding shut and the single mug waiting on the counter.